Hi, my name is Mark and welcome to the channel. Today I'm sitting down to talk to you about burnout. I've had a lot of people ask, what do you do when you face burnout with your crafting? And I've thought about it a lot. So we're going to sit, chat, talk about how I approach it, and I'd love to hear from you what you do when you just get burnt out doing something that normally you absolutely love. Let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Mark. I'm a knitter, a crocheter. I've been knitting for the last 7 years, and it's something that I've just fallen in love with. It's an activity that helps me feel centered, helps me feel grounded when I'm anxious, when I'm nervous. Having the chance to knit for even 10 minutes helps make me feel right again. And I think if you're watching this, if you found this video, you probably understand that. And if not, I hope you get to that point very soon. So knitting and crafting, whatever your specific craft might be, has pretty powerful properties, pretty powerful magic to it. And when you get burnt out, when you find yourself drifting away from it, when you find yourself pressured by the projects you've started and you feel the weight of them on your shoulders, it's an awful feeling because the thing that you love, the thing that you normally like to use maybe as an escape, maybe as a hobby to bring you that joy, is now something negative. A brief interruption from future Mark. Thanks for joining me for this video today. Stick around to the end of today's video to see the drawing for the winner of the project bag giveaway. So I'll see you later on after we've talked a little bit about fatigue and burnout. I've been asked, do I get burnt out? And I absolutely do. And it's looked different in my 7 years, which I know is a very small span of crafting. There are people watching right now, you might be one of them, who have been lifelong crafters. You might have been crafting for decades and decades since you could walk and talk. For me, it came later in life. Even still, if you see this channel, if you see the projects I do, you'll know that knitting and crocheting, fiber arts takes up a large part of my life. I spend a lot of hours every day engrossed in these activities. So in my 7 years, burnout has looked different at different stages. So initially when I started crafting, I was what you call a seasonal crafter. And there are a lot of seasonal crafters out there, nothing wrong with it at all. But a seasonal crafter is someone who crafts, let's say you knit or crochet only when it's chilly outside, or only in those seasons. Even if you live somewhere where it doesn't really get cold, you might only pick up your craft and work on projects in the fall, the autumn, the winter, maybe into the spring. But when it gets hot out, when sort of the general activities change, when it's more about being outside, swimming, hiking, taking those summer vacations, you might put your crafting down for months. And when that was the case for me, I didn't really experience much burnout. I would put my crafting down for months, which gave my hands a big break, it gave my mind a big break, and then by the time chilly weather came back, I was really excited. I was itching to craft again. I had lots of ideas of other patterns I wanted to work, maybe things I was excited to finish. The only drawback in that situation was that my projects took a much longer time to get off the needles or off the hook. If I didn't finish something by March, then I wasn't going to touch it again until September or October, and then a lot of things could go wrong. My tension could be different. I could have taken the needles or the hook away from the project, and maybe I didn't write down what size I was using. Maybe I've lost part of the pattern. Or if all of those things are in place, you might just be out of the rhythm of the pattern. If it was something that you had to get the hang of, or you had to memorize whatever combination of stitches, you've probably lost that over the months of your break. So the great benefit was that I never got burnt out. I would look forward to crafting because it was something I did seasonally, according to the weather outside and sort of the vibe of people enjoying wearing scarves, wearing hats, putting on a sweater, and that's what you see. It's what you see in ads on TV, it's what you see in storefront displays, and then in the warm months, I just put it down completely. It wasn't until I started working at a yarn shop once I had moved to Cleveland that I started to craft almost every day. And I think it's a great idea. And it never hit me. If this is something that I love so much, that makes me happy, that makes me feel like I can think straight, why wouldn't I try to do that every day? And I totally understand, depending on what your life looks like, depending on what your schedule looks like and your responsibilities, it may be totally unrealistic that you would have time to devote to crafting every day. But if you do, if you're in any situation where you can carve out 10 or 15 minutes or an hour in the evening to sit and work on a craft you like, it's amazing how much that routine can transform the quality of life, the quality of your day to day. And I think that's a pretty, I don't know, a pretty inexpensive, a pretty accessible way to elevate your quality of life. If it's something that makes you happy and you've got a project, you've got some yarn, you've got a hook or some needles, then that's all you need. It's not going to take a big investment, a subscription, anything crazy to just enjoy that for yourself. So I started my daily knitting, and when I say daily, I don't really do it every day. I probably craft 5 out of 7 days each week, just because there are days when I'm very busy. Since starting this channel, um, my tasks are different. There are days where I have to watch this footage back, which sometimes is like excruciatingly painful or boring to watch myself sit and talk and knit. Anyway, that takes a lot of time. Sometimes I can craft while I watch that back, but usually I have to keep my hands free so I can chop up the footage, edit, do whatever I need to churn a video out. So I'd say 5 out of 7 days, I get time to craft. I give myself time to craft. And sometimes that's me getting up a little bit earlier, getting ready, doing whatever I need to start my day, and then realizing, okay, I have 30 minutes or 45 minutes before I need to leave for work. So I'm going to sit and I'm going to craft, and I'll plan it out the night before so that I really look forward to it. I'll decide which project I'm going to sit and work on, and it could be anything. It could be casting on something new. It could be knitting a few rows of hundreds for a sweater project. It could be weaving in ends, or even making notes on a project and just doing some upkeep to whatever current projects I have on my list. So sometimes I do that. I carve out time in the beginning of the day. Other times there will be what I like to call surprise time. You realize for whatever reason you're gifted with a little bit of time during your day. Who knows? Maybe a meeting was canceled. Maybe a task you needed to complete is no longer on your plate. It's been taken away for whatever reason, so you have a lighter workload for the day. Maybe you finish early, you get out of rehearsal, you get out of class. Whatever it is, you're sitting at a sports practice, or you're waiting for your child in a music lesson. I mean, who knows what your day and what your life looks like, but there are often these really great pockets of time that get gifted back to us. So for those, I always try to keep something with me. I'll keep a project bag in the car, or I'll take something very small in my backpack or in my work bag, so that if I get that time, maybe I can craft for a bit. And then I'm achieving two things. I'm enjoying the peacefulness. I'm getting to relax, think straight. I get those endorphins that make me feel like I've accomplished something. I feel happy. And I'm also contributing to the progress of my project. So that's the best. The next time I get to the project, there's more of it complete. I've got Gus in here with me, and he's currently walking around on Ned's sweater that's blocking. He'll probably want to stretch out and take a nap on it. It's mostly dry. Hi, Gus. Let's see, I'll try to get a little clip. Usually the cats are not allowed in here because of all of the yarn. And we just like to keep a cat-free room in the house. But I let Gus come in because he's very responsible. And you can see he's not doing anything to bother the sweater. He's a great cat. Psst, psst, psst. Hi, Gus. The other great way I like to plug in daily crafting is just to save a little bit of time in the evening. And I think this is probably most common for a lot of people watching. You maybe keep your project in the sitting room, in the living room, so that when there's time to sit, maybe there's something on TV, maybe you're talking with someone, maybe you're listening to a program or a book, you can craft. And that's a very peaceful way to do it. As far as the burnout goes, with daily crafting, this is where it hits a lot harder. So I hadn't experienced that until I really pivoted to this crafting as often as I can mindset. And once I was in that groove, in that rhythm, I definitely felt the fatigue or the burnout hit. So when you're crafting every day, when you have projects always on your list, when you're always giving yourself some expectation to finish something, see results, see the progress, it's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of pressure that you might be putting on yourself. And so sometimes it's totally mental. It's just in your mind that there are these great expectations. And if you're not knitting fast enough, if you're not crocheting fast enough, or sewing, whatever your big project is, you start to feel more and more pressure, and maybe you start to feel more and more defeat. And then whatever the project is can become something really negative, which I think, as I said at the beginning, is the worst. You don't want this craft, this thing that you really enjoy, that brings you so many positive things into your life. You don't want it to be the bear. You don't want it to be the negative. So this is where I've had to figure out different approaches, different techniques to make sure that I'm not facing that burnout on a regular basis. Because if it happened with every project that I started, I think this wouldn't be a happy activity for me anymore. It would be something that I eventually just leave behind. So here comes the conversation of the monogamous crafter versus the, I don't know what we would call it, the crafter who has a sort of a finger in every pot. So the monogamous crafter, of course, is someone who picks a project, starts it, and finishes it. They don't move on to another project. They don't buy more yarn. They don't even browse for patterns until they have finished or they are very close to finishing their current project. And that's a beautiful thing. That has never been me. I've met several of you, I've spoken with several of you, but I just can't wrap my head around how that would make my crafting brain and my crafting hands feel. So the monogamous crafter achieves some really great things. You stay focused, you stay on task, you crank out your project, and it's hopefully going to be finished way faster than anyone who has 5 projects, 10 projects, a bunch of lingering projects going on at one time. And ideally, if you have one project going, there's a little bit less pressure. There's still the pressure of finishing that project and keeping things on track, but you only have that one to worry about. So that's one side of this whole situation. The other side is the crafter who is just craft obsessed and can't help but start so many new projects. And this is something I hear a lot of people talk about. And it's true that there's a great feeling. There's a real, I don't know, surge of energy related to starting a new project, picking out the yarn, maybe doing your swatch if you like to swatch. And I think we should all swatch. It saves us heartache in the future. But getting started, casting on, doing those initial few rows, a lot of people say that is the best part of a project for them. For me, it's not the best part. The best part is probably once I'm halfway into a project, once I can really see the fabric, once I can see the texture and the details and the colorway I've chosen, when I can see all of that come to life, and then I get excited to push through and finish the project. But for a lot of people, those initial few rows, that's the best part of a project. And that's where it gets dangerous. If you've cast on a hat and you've worked the brim, you've worked the ribbing, and you're not really as excited anymore, it might be really hard to commit to finishing that project. And then we get a lot of people that maybe will never finish that project. And that's okay. It's not ideal in my head. I don't want to have a lot of half-done projects sitting around or yarn that I no longer have a purpose for. But it's not a crime. I mean, none of this is life or death because this is crafting. And that's the big thing we have to zoom out from and realize it's just crafting. So I think to avoid the burnout, if you are that type of crafter, you have to have some sort of goal, something you're daydreaming about with the project that you're looking forward to. If the happiest part of a project for you is casting on, maybe start thinking of something else in the project that you can't wait to see. You can't wait to feel it in your hands, or you can't wait to work that part of the pattern. For me, I do a lot of sweaters. I do a lot of top-down sweaters, so I always look forward to separating the sleeves off and then joining the body, working the rest of the body. So typically, that's not going to happen for at least a few days. I'm going to cast on, maybe you're doing the back panel, then you pick up and do the front. Once you've done the whole upper body, the whole yoke of the sweater, then you get to separate the sleeves off. And so you have a lot of fabric to knit or crochet. You have a lot of length, a lot of stitches to work, a lot of increasing. And so it takes a while. So in my mind, the most exciting part, the thing I'm always working towards, is separating the sleeves off, trying on the sweater, making sure I like the fit, and then getting to move forward, finishing the body and the sleeves. And that's where it starts to drag for me. Doing the rest of the body starts to feel really monotonous, really slow. When I finish the body, I'm excited because it's something different. I get to do sleeves, but even in the first sleeve, it's kind of a drag because it's just the same thing as I go and as I decrease, and then I have to do it a second time. So if you are the person that only dreams of casting on something new, maybe set a benchmark, look at the pattern, look at people's pattern examples on Ravelry, and find something about it, whether it's a color change, a texture change, a certain part of the construction of whatever you're making that you're really excited about. And then let that be the reason you sit down and invest time and love into that project. Now, for a double-edged sword that comes along with crafting so many things at one time, or at least a few things at one time, the great thing, sorry, I dropped a stitch here. The great thing is that you have variety. You might be working a hat, a sweater, and a pair of socks, and they might all be at different sort of difficulty levels. So you might have a project that is very straightforward that you can pick up and do with very little brain power, very little energy. You might not have to look at it, period. So you can do it while you're having a conversation with someone. You can do it while you're watching TV. You don't really have to keep track of where you are in the project. You're just working. You're working the body of a hat, maybe the length of a sweater, maybe the length of a sock. You've already turned the heel, so you're just working until you've reached a certain measurement. And that's great. I know a lot of people like to have what they call TV knitting or TV crochet projects. And in the mix of your other projects, you might have things that are really engaging. You might have projects with color work charts or cable charts. Maybe you have a lot of color changes. Maybe you just have a more complex stitch. So it just takes a little bit more involvement to keep up with the project. And those are great. I think those are the perfect projects for the unexpected time, the gift of time, maybe a free weekend day, maybe a day off where you can sit, you can prop up your chart, and you can work for hours. So obviously, having a variety of projects going on at one time saves you the mental hang-up of one thing. If you get sick of a project, if you're just over it, you don't like it anymore, having the variety will save you from that type of burnout. You can go to the project that you feel like working on that day. Granted, all of those projects will take a longer time to finish because you're splitting your time. Maybe you're only working on the project once a week or once every couple of weeks. But still, when they're finished, you'll have finished objects. You'll have things that you've successfully done. So it's not necessarily better to work one way or the other. It really depends on your brain and what keeps you interested. So that's the initial sort of mental side of burnout. If you have one project and you're over it, you're sick of it, you're tired of it, maybe it's too complicated, something's gone wrong, maybe it's not a good pattern, and so you've been led astray, then you're not going to like working on it and you might be burnt out. And if you only have that one project to do, that's unfortunate because you get to the decision of whether you should scrap it, whether you should frog it, pull it all back, reuse the yarn, who knows. On the other side of things, if you're crafting a lot of stuff at one time, you're probably saving yourself the mental burnout because you have good variety, but then you have a lot of pressure. You have a lot of lingering, unfinished objects. You might feel like you are up to your eyeballs in yarn or unfinished objects, works in progress, and you might feel the burnout that way. It's just too much and it's unmanageable. So if you're in that camp of a lot of projects, lingering things, things stressing you out that have carried through with you for seasons or decades, I like to start small. It's like if you need to pay down debt or cross items off of a lengthy to-do list, a lot of people will look for the smallest thing, the fastest thing you can do to check it off and give yourself the sense of accomplishment. Make the load and the list a little bit lighter. So in that case, if you have a lot of unfinished objects, which was my case this last year, I think I had maybe 5 sweaters that were lingering and they were stressing me out. Each time I picked a new project, I thought, well, what about that other sweater that's just sitting there, maybe halfway done, maybe 3/4 of the way done, maybe only a quarter of the way. And it made me feel guilty about starting something new, buying more yarn, because I have something that I could work on at home. So this year, as autumn approached, I made a plan to start working on these unfinished objects sort of in alternation with things I was more excited about. So I would finish something with new yarn, a new pattern, something that felt very current, and then I would pick up an unfinished object and at least figure out what needed to be done. So I would assess it, I would try it on, make sure that things were on track, and if they weren't, I could go back and adjust that. But if they were, then I would just add up how much needed to be done to finish the whole project. And then I started small. If I had a project that only needed sleeves, the body was completely done, all I had to do was pick up the existing stitches and knit 2 sleeves, that's where I started. And I would give myself maybe a week to work on that project and get it done. Then I could block it, finish it, give it to whoever the recipient was, or wear it for myself. Then I could go back to one of my new or current projects. So that's been my technique this year, trying to intersperse these unfinished objects. One of them is here in front of me. You may have seen this in a video last year. It's not much longer. It's maybe 2 or 3 inches longer now than it was a year ago because I just picked it up about a week ago. And it feels good. It makes me feel like I'm being accountable, I'm sticking to my goals because I'm making progress. This is back sort of on my radar. So anyway, if you have mountains of projects that you're interested in finishing, I think it's nice to make a list, decide what needs to be done for each project, and then you can start small. And hopefully, with each successful completion of a project, you'll feel that little boost, that little push that makes you excited to keep working on the other things rather than feeling the pressure that leads to burnout. Okay, that was a lot of talking, a lot of rambling about the mental side of burnout, just feeling like something isn't for you or feeling like there's too much and you're overwhelmed. The other side of things that people ask about and that I've experienced is the physical. So if you craft all the time, you'll know it takes a toll. So I'll be in front of my overhead camera now. When I craft, I think a lot about the ergonomics. And someone asked me this maybe just yesterday. Do I think about the ergonomics of my crafting? And I do. Um, Things like needle size or the length of a needle make a huge difference for me. If you're someone who works with really heavy fiber and you have to use extremely large crochet hooks or knitting needles, you'll know that that's fatiguing. And the same is true on the other end of the spectrum. If you use extremely small needles or hooks, it can also cause an equal amount of fatigue. So it's good to know what your comfortable range is and to generally choose projects in that range. It doesn't mean that you can't ever do something that's completely out of the realm for you, but it will have an impact on your hands and on your comfort. So for me, I always like to be on a 5-inch needle tip. If I go smaller than that, like a 4-inch tip for hats, it makes my hands cramp up a little bit. Something about my hold, something about the size of my hands, the way I like to support my needles, and the way I like to tension my yarn, it's no longer comfortable. So I've changed. When I do hats, instead of working on a 16-inch needle, which is a great way to work a hat, it's nice to just go in the round, I do mine on 5-inch needle tips with enough cord length for magic loop. And it does mean that I have to flip my project halfway through each round, but it makes my hands happier. So that's going to help me avoid that fatigue and that potential burnout. While we're talking about the tools we use, I think the quality of your tool matters. If you are someone who has the ability to invest in sort of any brand of crochet hook or knitting needle, then find the ones that feel the best for you. And there are different things on the market. There are specifically ergonomically minded needles and hooks, things that have a different sized grip. There are knitting needles that are cubed, that are not rounded, and that can be a helpful thing to hold and grip. You might just like a different material. I like to use a stainless steel needle. I like the speed of it, and I like a lace tip. I like a pointed needle tip because it really helps me get into my stitches more easily. I also like the Gu red lace because I'm a big fan of the cord. The cord lays pretty flat and I don't have to fight with it. So this is my needle choice. And once I invested in an interchangeable set, I had most everything that I'll ever need for these projects. So it's what I use. It's what I use every day for every project, and it makes a big difference. So if you're in a position where you can invest in any sort of needle or hook, try a few, see if you have friends or a local shop or a local crafting group or guild where you can get your hands on a few different makes, and then see what feels the best to you. The next thing that will help avoid fatigue and potential burnout is to check in with your technique. Check in with the way you grip, grasp, check in with the way you tension yarn. Make sure that you're not using more force or more muscle tension than you need. And also check in with the way you sit. Whatever chair you're sitting in, if it has arms, if it doesn't have arms, make sure you check in to keep your body in decent alignment. You want to sit well. Of course, we want to be comfortable, but make sure you're not twisting or crunching up your spine. Make sure that your shoulders are relaxed. Make sure that your arms have freedom, that you're not sitting, tensing up, and doing anything that's going to add to unnecessary fatigue. I think that's probably the number one reason people burn out. They're just uncomfortable. They're worried, they're anxious, and so we're taking all of that worry and anxiety and we're pushing it into the project. Instead, we want to find a way to relax, to be comfortable, and use just enough energy, just enough muscle to craft as needed. I definitely find a limit for myself in how much I can knit before my hands just need a break. For me, it's probably 4 or 5 hours, which to some people might sound like a ridiculously long time to sit and knit. For others, it might be what you do every day, so it doesn't sound crazy at all. If I'm on sort of an average size needle, which for me is anything from about 3 millimeter to, let's say, 5.5, maybe 6 millimeter. Well, uh, I can't talk. That's my comfortable range of needle sizes. I can knit on smaller needles, I can knit on larger needles, but when I go smaller or larger, it's a little bit different for my hands. It feels more foreign in my hands, and so I feel more fatigue. I cramp up, my hands get taxed more easily. So if I'm on my standard range of needle sizes, I can knit probably for 5 or 6 hours in a day before I start to feel fatigued. After that, I'm going to feel fatigued and I'm going to get it first in my right hand. I'm a continental knitter, so my right needle does most of the work, my right needle and right hand. Let me zoom in a bit and I'll talk you through this. So my left needle stays pretty stationary. It does a little bit of dipping and rotating, but my right hand and my right needle, that's what leads into the stitch. It's what catches the yarn over. It's what pulls the stitch through and pulls the stitch off the left needle. So when I knit, you'll see my right hand is doing way more than my left hand, maybe even twice as much. So at the end of a long knitting day, or if I'm knitting on large needles or small needles, doing something out of the ordinary for me, that's where I feel the fatigue. My right hand will need a little bit more attention than my left. And one very selfish way I love to counteract this fatigue is by giving that hand a bit of a massage. So I'll do it to myself. I'll just kind of mash gently. My thumb, sort of the whole thumb that moves here, always wants a little more attention. And fortunately, I have a very nice husband who is willing to give me a hand massage, which that's the selfish part. He's very good to do it. If you've been here before, you already know how good Ned is. So I'll ask. I'll say at the end of a long day when we're winding down, I'll say, do you mind mashing my hand for a few minutes? And if you've got someone in your life to do that, ask them. If it's going to make a big difference for you, do it. Another thing that's nice is if you ever go and get massages or you have any sort of massage therapy, physical therapy, if it's an option for you to have someone work on your hands, work on your forearms, go for it. I know at crafting retreats and even at my local shop, we have a massage therapist come in, usually once a month, and she will give chair massages. And one option, you can do, neck, shoulders. You can also do hands and forearms. And for crafters, I think what a treat. That's so nice. So that's a great thing to do. If you don't have anyone to assist you in that manner, sorry, I just found a yarn over. If you don't have anyone to assist you in that manner, you can always check in with yourself. You can do different stretches, different things to just to check in with your hands, to give them a little bit of sort of much needed, much deserved attention. And I don't have anything I do specifically to myself besides general mashing and sort of interlacing of fingers, stretching and balling up. But I know there's a lot out there. So there are probably some good resources. If you Google it, if you go on YouTube and search, you'll probably find people who have some good sort of exercises and rehab for your own hands. So on the physical side of fatigue and burnout, be good to your hands. Use good tools. Find out what your comfortable range of needle, hook, and yarn weight are, and stick with it. If you're doing something out of the ordinary that gives your hands a lot more of a challenge, then take it more slowly. Work in those shorter bursts so that you can avoid potential injury or anything that's going to prevent you from investing in your crafting time. Another physical element to pay close attention to is your eyes, paying attention to how much light you have, how easy or difficult it is to see your stitches, to see whatever fabric you're working on. I think if people sit in dimly lit situations and work on their projects, straining their eyes to see what's going on, to count stitches, to find where you are in a pattern, then that's not going to be helpful for anything. You're probably going to end up with some mistakes in your project, but you're also going to wear out your eyes. So I think pay attention to your hands, your body, your posture when you're crafting, but also pay attention to how hard your eyes have to work. Make sure you've got good light. When I sit here at the desk, I have a ring light above me, I have a ring light in front of me, so I've got very good light. When I'm downstairs at my house, I don't have a great lamp or anything that shines light, so I use one of those neck lamps. I put it around my neck, and that way I can direct the light exactly where I need it and adjust the level. So if you don't have a good lamp or a good overhead light, you can get something pretty inexpensive to go around your neck and use just when you craft. And it can stay in your crafting bag, your basket, wherever you like to keep your things. Now that we've covered the mental side of fatigue, the physical side of fatigue, let me share my top tips to avoid burnout and keep you interested in your crafting. So we've talked about how to avoid burnout, but if you found yourself there, you're already burnt out, how do you get back into your crafting? And I've been there. I get depressed, I get overwhelmed, things in life just stack up, and I feel like sometimes they stack against me in total opposition, and the last thing I want to do is craft. And it's a pretty lousy situation to be in because I know that if I were to craft, it would bring me happiness, it would bring me joy, and I would feel better, but I don't want to do it. So to get myself there, one approach, so this will be the first thing on the list, is to finish something. This could be easier for some than others, depending on what projects you have sitting around in your life. But if I have something that is almost done, maybe all the knitting is done, and I just need to weave in ends, I need to block it, I just need to do the finishing, I need to put on buttons, whatever it is, that's the easiest thing I can do to feel a sense of accomplishment and to finish something. Your version of finishing something might be different. It might be that you need to knit sleeves. It might be that you need to finish the length of a sock or the body of a sweater or finish a blanket. You might have a lot more knitting or crocheting ahead of you, but if you can muster that strength to pick it up and start doing it bit by bit, by the time you finish it, you will feel a great sense of accomplishment, which for me pushes me to pick something else up to keep crafting. So take a look at what you've got, find the smallest thing, the easiest thing to finish, and finish it. If you have nothing small, maybe start something new. Find a very small project. It could be something like a Sophie scarf, it could be something like a simple hat, it could be another kerchief, I don't know, anything small that's accessible for you and your skill set. And then cast that on, work the project, and finish it. If there's something you know you can make in a day, or 2 days, or 3 days, pick some yarn you like, get it on the needle, get it on the hook, and finish it. And it'll do the same thing. It's going to give you a push to keep working and keep crafting. The next thing on my list is to work on something you love. Again, this could be something new or something that you already have floating around in your unfinished projects or works in progress. If there's something you love the stitch, you love the texture it makes, you love the color or the fiber you've chosen, pick that up and spend time with it. And as you work, let yourself meditate on it. Let yourself kind of fill up with what it is you love. If you love to work a knit one, purl one rib, let yourself feel the rhythm of it. If you like to work with color changes, then pick up something that you get to stripe. Work however many rows you need and then change colors and enjoy how fun it is to change over to a new color, to see the shift in your project, and to feel that accomplishment that you finished another section. So I think this is something we should keep in mind all the time when we craft. If there's something about your project that you love, pay attention to it. Let yourself enjoy it in the moment. And I think that's just going to add to all of the love, all of the good energy that you put into everything you make to begin with. Similarly to the first suggestion of finishing something, if you don't have anything you really love at the moment, start something new. Get some yarn that you are crazy about. Work with tools you like. Pick a pattern that you've always wanted to make or something you've made before successfully that you would enjoy making again. And once you get that started, hopefully it will bring you that same renewed energy and happiness that pushes you to keep crafting. Number 3 on my list is to use good tools. If you have tools you like to use, if you have a favorite crochet hook, if you have favorite fiber, if you have a favorite set of knitting needles or size of knitting needles, choose a project that can utilize that. And again, just let yourself enjoy feeling that in your hands and how successful you are at working your stitches with tools that you like. For me, this extends to project bags, scissors, really anything, any accessory that goes with my knitting. I think the whole aesthetic that we create with our crafting can contribute to the feeling, the push, and sort of the obsession we have with crafting. If I have a project bag that I love, I'm going to want to pick it up. I'm going to want to look at it, carry it around, have somebody else notice it. So go dig out some of your favorite things, put them all together, and let them combine to make a project that you're really proud of. I've got 2 more things on the list, and then we'll be done for today. The next item is to share what you've made with someone else. So sometimes I get down in the dumps about what I've made or how slowly things are going, or maybe I'm just not that proud of the things I've made. And so I reflect on it. Maybe I've taken some pictures, and so I can look back on them. Maybe I put the projects on Ravelry. I could scroll through my projects page. I think it makes a big difference to share what you're doing in a very solitary way with people in your life. So that could be on social media. You could take a picture of what you've made and put it up, share it with people. If you don't do that, if you don't have social media accounts or want to post it publicly, put it down in your own crafting journal. Take a picture of it, save it to an album on your phone, write down your thoughts about it, reflect on what it was like to make whatever you've made, and let yourself be proud of it. Even if it seems like something that isn't worth being proud of or that no one else would be excited to see, just share it. You never know who out there is exactly like you and who else is going to see something you've made and identify with you or feel like what they make is just as beautiful because they see you take pride in it and it inspires them to take pride in what they have made. So that's something that I don't do that often. The biggest way I've done it is through this channel. When I get on to make a video, I might wear a sweater, I might show you a project. So that's me sharing it. And I can't tell you how much it energizes me for someone to say really anything about it. Maybe they say, oh, I've made that too, or I love that pattern, it's going on my list. Whatever it is, it makes me feel connected and it energizes me to keep investing in my crafting. And that takes me to the final thing on the list, number 5, that is to invest in your community. So this is something I've talked about a lot with people in comments, in Zoom sessions I've had, with anybody who watches the channel. We always talk about community. And before I started this channel, I didn't feel like my crafting community was that big. I had my local shop where some people would see what I was making. Sometimes you get to connect and talk about projects or techniques or things you have in common, but I wasn't doing that all the time. So a lot of things that I made were truly made in a very solitary setting. It was me at home. Ned would see the projects I was making, but maybe nobody else would. And if it was something that I wasn't going to wear out and about, then nobody else would ever know about it. So once I started the channel and I started posting, sharing projects, kind of sharing the room I'm in, just giving you a view into my life, the community that I've found has been the most transformative thing for me. This doesn't mean you have to start a YouTube channel to find this community. It could be that you go to your local shop more often. Even if you're not going to purchase something every time you go. Make connections with people there. See if there are social events, if there are places that you can go and craft together. See if there are things going on in your community. And I know from some of you that watch, you don't have things like that in your area. So I challenge you to be brave and start something. Just put out a flyer, put out feelers, and see if there are other people around who have that in common with you. And I'm always amazed by how much crafters have in common, even if we've never met, even if we don't really have other things in our lives that line up. Because we craft, we share so much. So those are my general thoughts. People have asked about fatigue and burnout, and I wanted to put it together in some sort of video. I know this was rambly. I don't know how long this will be, but it feels like it's long already. So thank you for being here. If you have things that work for you that I didn't share, please, please, please let us know in the comments. People were saying on a video I posted recently that they learned some things from the video I shared, but they learned an equal amount from reading the comments, which is my favorite thing. That's the community element that I love. So take the time to scroll through the comments below this video and see what other people are sharing. You might find someone with a story that's a lot like yours, or you might just find a new friend, somebody else that makes you feel like you belong, even though you might be across the world. A huge thank you to all of you who took the time to watch that video last week and for taking the time to comment and enter for the project bag. We had 1,074 entries, and so I'm going to use a random number generator to pick a number between 1 and 1,074. So let's go over here, we'll type that in, and we'll see what number we get. And our number is 689. So at this point, I'm going to extract the comments, put them in order, sequential order of when they came on the video, and I'll look for that 689th comment. All right, our winner for the project bag is Patricia Grenner at Patricia Grenner 8033. So Patricia, make sure to send me an email at makermarkknits@gmail.com, and we'll talk about how to get this project bag to you. I appreciate all of you taking the time to watch, taking the time to comment, and I wish I had nice, beautiful things that I could send to everyone who watches with me. But in this case, congratulations to Patricia, and stick around on the channel. I'll have other giveaways at different benchmarks. My next benchmark should be 25,000. So by the time I roll closer to 25,000 subscribers, I'll think of something fun to share with one of you in the community. All right, I'll pass myself back for an official goodbye from today's video. So thanks for being here. I can't tell you how much your support means to me. As always, a huge, huge, huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for making this happen and keeping this channel afloat. And thank you for taking the time to watch. Feel free to subscribe if you're not already, and I'd love to hear from you. So let me know what's going on in your life, what projects you're working on, what kind of crafter you are in the comments below. As always, happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye. He's warm from the window. Excuse me. Excuse me.